We are back. Mick Walker, Spencer Holbrook. Let's talk recruiting. That's what we're going to do here on the Ohio State Football News YouTube channel known as Lettermen Row. You guys know us. You might love us. You might hate us. Either way, thanks for being here. Again, that's Mick. He's the recruiting guy. I'm just Spencer. I'll host this bad boy. And we'll talk about Ohio State football recruiting. But first, obviously, you guys know it. You love it. Big Game Football USA, Big Game Factory, the Big Game Football Factory. Go to biggameusa.com/Buckeyes. Get your hands on this football. Gray fractal swoosh that the Buckeyes use on their footballs. The college ball playoff logo, Ohio State logo. It's pretty nice football. High and tight. Ball security is job security. Make sure you grab one of those. It's the official football that Ohio State actually used in the college ball playoff. Not like a game used, but it's the football that they do use on the field. You can have one today. It's a nice keepsake for the national championship game. Again, Mick over there. You guys know that by now. Mick, let's talk. Ohio State got a commitment, but first, Spencer Holbrook has decommitted. I got to tell you guys, I've been a loyal Southwest customer for a long time. I've got a Southwest card. I've flown Southwest a long time. Now the new baggage policy, I'm out. Decommitted. Respect my decision. My recruitment is open. What do you think about that, Mick?
I know your bags fly free was your big staple whenever we talked about where you fly or who you flew with. So to see Southwest change that policy, and I mean, it changes really everything that you have prioritized when it comes to your flying experience, and that's just a disappointing thing. I imagine there are airlines lining up at the door at the Holbrook household to kind of get their foot in the door to make sure that you're flying everywhere, whether it's private jet companies, big airline companies, everybody's trying to get you in, and I imagine we'll settle on a good spot, but it's a bad day to be a Southwest person, that's for sure.
I would say that my leader right now in my recruitment is Delta. They seem to take good care of their customers, both domestically and internationally. And as somebody who has some plans to do some international travel, that might help me. But my recruitment is open. I might release a top 5, maybe even a top 10, depending on how far we want to stretch this thing out. Expecting a decision maybe midsummer after those official visits. Got a couple places I'm trying to go in the summer. We might check out a couple different airlines, see what the vibe is, see how the relationship building is going. And then we'll make a decision from there. So in the class of 2026, expect the decision at some point. I do have one Southwest flight left. It's all the way out to Washington for the Ohio State-Washington game. And then I'll be done in September. So we'll see what happens there. But on to more serious things, the things that actually matter, because no one cares where I fly or how I fly, which we can talk about that on the Lettermen Lounge message board, $1 for your first week right now. But, Mick, Ohio State, a massive commitment, a big splash on the recruiting trail. Normally, in-state recruitments don't really get the people going, but this is a big-time exception because Ohio State swoops in and steals almost, in a way, Max Riley, the Avon Lake 4-star offensive lineman from right here in Ohio, from the grips that Clemson had on him. Everybody thought he was going to Clemson. The RPM from On 3 was starting to trend towards Clemson. It looked like this was going to be a Matt Luke masterclass, grabbing a second offensive lineman from the state of Ohio. And instead, Tyler Bowen, Ryan Day, the Ohio State offensive staff, get it done on the trail, bring in Max Riley. He is the latest to commit to this Ohio State class of 2026. What was your initial reaction? Were you surprised? And what is your first take on what's going on here?
I was quite surprised. I mean, I was sitting down in my living room watching a movie with my wife while she was making some cookies in the kitchen, and all of a sudden I get a notification from our On 3's Hayes Fawcett that some news had just broken and Max Riley committed to Ohio State. Luckily, as Spencer has taught me very well, and our former coworker Matt Parker has also taught me, is you got to pre-write some of this stuff. The Max Riley story had kind of been in the vault ever since I put the On 3 RPM in there for January. So we had that one ready. We fired it off. And from there, it was just kind of trying to do some digging on some details on what happened. I kind of spoke to his dad a little bit. I tried to get a hold of Max. I'll have more on that in the near future, hopefully. But yeah, I was just kind of reacting to it in the immediate because it was, like you said, quite surprising. Steve Wilfong put an RPM in for Clemson literally the day prior, and Steve does not miss off on that. And I don't think Steve had a completely wrong pulse on it. So for it to change that quickly and for him to do it before even taking a spring visit, because he was not supposed to visit until April 1st is when he was supposed to visit. So that's a couple more weeks still. So for him to do it this quickly was quite surprising, especially considering the Clemson news and the fact that Tyler Bowen has just been officially announced for, a couple of weeks. So all brand new stuff, but all positive stuff for Ohio State in their recruiting trail when it comes to Max Riley.
Tell me about Max Riley. You've seen him a couple times. You've watched him play. You have a relationship with the player and with some people up there in Northeast Ohio. What is the rub on him? What are people thinking about him? Is he a guard, tackle, center? Is he somebody who can be versatile? Where do you see him at the next level? Like, obviously, we're talking about relationship building, what Tyler Bowen is able to do, and we will get to that. But I want to know what on the field impact this has, because he seems like a guy who's got a really bright future.
Yeah, I think first 2 years of his high school career, I believe he played tackle, right or left. I can't remember exactly where. Last year, he primarily played guard. And talking to his dad, even after the season, before he had committed, the plan was always kind of move Max into center as a senior. So that's kind of be the plan this year. And I think that's a spot he could end up at Ohio State, but I think it's more likely right or left guard, one of the two. Max is really good on a lot of stuff they ask their guards to do right now. That's pulling, moving on the run, some of the outside zone stretch type of speed stuff where you have to get out and really run and block when those in that whole formation and scheme. So I'm expecting Max to be able to play a guard in either spot there in that kind of run scheme. I think pass protection wise, he's already pretty fluid and pretty easy moving and during all that type of stuff, which is what you want to see from a high school guy. You can always kind of get them stronger and make them better at base blocking and driving guys off the ball. Once they add some strength, I think Max has good technique as a run blocker, but he still needs some size and strength to kind of compete where at the high school, at the college level. He's not too far off from what I think Luke Montgomery was coming out. I think Luke was a little bit more stout, a little more put together. That's why Luke kind of was a defensive lineman viewed early in his high school career because of how well put together he was. He obviously developed a little bit bigger and quicker, so he's played now. He played the big time minutes last season. I think Max can kind of do some similar stuff as Luke, so long as he continues to get bigger. But I'd say definitely guard, maybe even center.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's good news because Ohio State's always looking for interior guys. It's been one of those things where the Buckeyes have recruited well on the interior, but not well at tackle. So I'm very curious as to what happens next there for the Buckeyes because they've got to get a tackle. Tyler Bowen, man, though, like to make an immediate splash. And, it was announced like the first week of February that this was going to be the hire. Ohio State doesn't make it official until like the third week of February. So, he's been waiting a little while for this first splash, but still, when you talk about recruiting, how it can be such a long game, to land a guy in state and to build that relationship within the first month of you officially being on the job, I think that's a pretty big deal. What do you think this means for Tyler Bowen? How did he do in this recruitment? And what are your sources saying, was the difference here? Was it, in what Tyler Bowen was able to do, to land this commitment from Max Riley?
Yeah, I think Tyler Bowen was kind of the last key thing that needed to change here. I think Max had already kind of developed a strong relationship with Ryan Day over the past couple of months, especially when you talk about the national championship run, the faith that he showed in Ryan Day and Justin Fry keeping him around, the way that those kind of guys kind of stepped up and led Ohio State to a national championship with their units. I think Max also is a guy that has a lot of younger siblings. I think his younger brother's going to be playing on varsity football for him with him this year at Avon Lake. He's got a younger brother, an even younger brother, another younger sister. He has a handful of siblings. I think staying closer to home, obviously, Cleveland to Columbus is not the shortest trip, but it's still staying closer home than Clemson, South Carolina, who was his other finalist. I think that played a big role, but also, like you said, I think Tyler Bowen coming in and showing that he has a plan for how he's going to develop, how he's going to use them. And I don't think guys like Charlie Dickey or Marcus Johnson are completely we're out. I don't think they were completely honest. I think all three of those guys really came in and focused on building a relationship with Max, and not only Max, but his parents. I remember talking to his father, Dan, who said that he was hearing from Tyler Bowen a couple of days after Tyler Bowen was kind of announced. And I mean, there's a handful of parents that I've heard from that have since heard from Tyler Bowen as well. But Dan was one of the first ones, and I think that's because Ryan Day and Tyler Bowen knew, hey, if we're going to go get some offensive line commitments, let's start in state. And that starts with Max Riley, and then the other one now becomes four-star offensive tackle Sam Greer at Archbishop Hoban in Akron.
Are you foreshadowing there?
Sam's going to be on campus here in about 2 weeks or a week or so. He's going to be on campus for the first spring practice visit, along with 5-star plus offensive tackle Jackson Cantwell. I believe Brett Colajay, who's out of IMG Academy, a guy that's a Denver transplant that now plays in Florida. He'll be there. Micah Smith, who will also be there. I put Micah Smith and Sam Greer on my next 5 kind of potential commitment list, and I think both of them could kind of be on there. But I don't know if either of them are super close. Sam really likes what he's hearing from Missouri right now. That's the tough part. He likes what he's hearing from Missouri. He's shown a lot of interest in Florida recently. But I think Tyler Bowen's done a good job of building the relationship, and obviously that's going to be expedited once you get him and you get Max. I imagine Max could make a trip down. I don't know what his school schedule is. I know Max is trying to get through his classes. But when you get Sam and you get Micah and you get Jackson and you get Breck, all these guys kind of down for one day in March 17th, and with Tyler Bowen, I think it's going to be a big day for them. I don't know if it leads to commitments, but it's going to be a good day for building the foundation of relationships for this class. That's for sure.
So you mentioned the next 5. Obviously, we're going to talk about that because I think it's important. And you already said Sam Greer, Micah Smith, both going to be on campus here. Micah's going to be on campus March 16th and 17th. Greer is going to be on campus, I believe, March 17th as well. But then he's going to Michigan. He's going down to Miami. He'll be at Missouri this weekend before he comes to Ohio State. What's the worry level there with Sam and Missouri? Because now that Max Riley is in the fold, we don't see these guys decommit from in-state, from Ohio State to elsewhere. I think we're going to say that Max is in the class. There's going to be a signature there in December unless something catastrophic happens. But as far as Sam goes, what's going to be the biggest hurdle here, and how big of a threat do you actually believe Missouri is for his commitment?
I think Missouri's a real threat. They've done a good job of getting him on campus. He has a good relationship with the offensive line coach there. Eli Drinkwitz's the head coach there. And obviously, I mean, they have had a good tradition, and they're going to send a guy that's probably going to be a first-round pick, and Armand Minbu, I believe is his name. He's going to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft this year. Obviously, Ohio State's going to have Josh Simmons, who's likely going to be a first-round pick. You have Donovan Jackson, who could be a first-round pick. Paris Johnson Jr., who was a first-round pick a couple years ago. So Ohio State can go line for line, guy for guy with Missouri when it comes to offensive line development. I think really what it comes down to is going to be Tyler Bowen's relationship with him. I think Sam Greer really liked Justin Frye, and I think Sam Greer was a big fan of Justin Frye despite some of the critics that he had when it comes to offering more guys. I think Sam appreciated that. Obviously, I don't think he's upset that Tyler Bowen's offered more guys. It just comes down to building that relationship and kind of getting sincere with him. I think his mom, Kelly, is another person that Tyler Bowen, I believe, has already spoken with. Sam's going to have a good relationship with Sam has a good relationship with Ryan Day, Tyler Bowen, and now it's going to be up to kind of the Greer family. It's also worth noting, I mean, we can get into this later, but some of these visit stuff, Sam has been really occupied with basketball. So whether we think, they should have got him on campus before spring practice or whatnot, up until last weekend, Sam was busy playing basketball. So I think getting him on campus for spring practice is a big win for Tyler Bowen because it's about as early as he's taking visits this spring and off season.
What about Micah? Because, I mean, we've been hearing Micah Champ Smith. If you don't only know him as Champ, that's Micah. If you only know him as Micah, that's Champ. Micah Champ Smith. We've been hearing his name for like a year and a half now as a guy in this 2026 class to watch. Why is that? I know Vero Beach, TJ Alford is a current Ohio State linebacker. He seems very happy at Ohio State. I'm sure that's a good feather in Ohio State's cap, but he was kind of waning as well in his commitment at one point. What is the connection there with Micah Champ Smith and Ohio State? Because he has seemed like an Ohio State lean, or Ohio State's going to be a factor in this for as long as I can remember in his recruitment. And other than Ohio State good, what's the connection there that's keeping him talking to Ohio State so much and making this, something that Ohio State could end up landing, from the Sunshine State?
Yeah, I think he's another. We can say this we say it on the Lettermen Lounge message board. I think other people say it about prospects, but he's really an Ohio State guy when I think just the personal side of things, the actual obviously football ability. But I think he's hit it off with Ryan Day, who he met with during the January contact period. There weren't a ton of offensive linemen that got to meet with Ryan Day because he was out seeing different targets and throughout different days in the South. But Micah Champ Smith was one of the guys he met with. He met with Micah and his father. Then later that day, Justin Frye, who's now with the Arizona Cardinals, also met with Micah and his father. And I don't think, obviously, there's any ill will or bad thoughts about Ohio State now that Justin Frye's left. I think Micah had a good relationship with Justin Frye, but there's also an element of he has a really good relationship with Ryan Day. So it's similar to Max, I think, where you talk about if you can get that relationship with Tyler Bowen, I think he has it with Ryan Day. I think he's invested in Ohio State when it comes to just the fit, when it comes to off-field, on-field. Obviously, you have the tie with Tarbo's TJ Alford, who's already there. Like, he's going to be in his ear. And I think TJ's also done a good job of kind of making sure Micah knows it's his decision. But I think there's just been a fascination with Ohio State ever since he camped there. And obviously, he visited last summer before the camp, just kind of swung through with some high school teammates that were going to different camps. He then returned for the, I believe, Indiana game. And he's been on campus a handful of times since. I think he was at the spring game last year or another April or May visit. So he's been up a handful of times, and he'll probably be up a handful of times more starting with next week when he gets up. I believe, or I imagine he'll get an official visit on the books with Ohio State if he does not commit anywhere this spring. But I think it's just been an overall feel thing when it comes to Ohio State on and off the field. And Ryan Day's kind of spearheaded that and made sure it's continued with the offensive line coach change.
Oh, by the way, Ohio State just won the national championship, and Florida State went 2-10, while Florida is still kind of floundering, and Miami doesn't really seem like a fit for him. So like the in-state schools aren't there. Georgia recruits so many different guys that it's hard to get a feel for where they're at, other than with just top 2 or top 50 players nationally. It seems like that's all they sign. Champ Smith is the number 157 overall player. He's the number 11 interior offensive lineman. He's the number 22 player in the state of Florida. I think if you land him along with Max Riley, you find a center to go along with those guys, and then you go out and make those big swings for the tackles, get Sam Greer in the fold, and then all of a sudden you go after a Felix Ojo, you go after a Jackson Cantwell, you go after some of these tackles that are so big in this class. That's a 4 or 5 man class right there. And then you can go swing again for the fences and try to land another big fish out there, in what is a bigger pond now that Tyler Bowen is fishing from than what Justin Fry was fishing from, to tie that analogy all together, I guess. It's just interesting to me, the moving parts here. What we do know now is Max Riley is in the fold. I really like this pickup for Ohio State. I'm not going to put I'll put you on the spot. We've talked a lot about who could be next. If you had to pick right now, who's next in this class? And this isn't an RPM. This isn't a prediction. It might just be like a feel thing. Like, what are you thinking right now?
Yeah, I think it would go to the last guy on that next 5 list, and that would be 4-star linebacker CJ Sana out of Lewis Center, Olentangy. Obviously, his teammate, and we can kind of get into that later if we want to, his teammate Ken Gebhard committed to Clemson earlier this morning upon the day we're recording this, which is Tuesday, sorry. Lost track of my days already. But Caden Gebhard committed to Clemson earlier this morning. I don't think that impacts CJ Sana at all. I think he's got a really big, a really high infatuation with Ohio State. He has a good relationship with James Laurinaitis. And he's another guy that I believe he's either going to be at the first or second or one of the spring practices that first week that Ohio State's back, and he's going to be back again for April 5th, which is one of the weekends that I think is really shaping up to be a big recruiting weekend, because I don't know, maybe there could be a scrimmage that week. I don't know necessarily the spring schedule, but I imagine that it's that weekend right before the spring game, and it's shaping up to have a ton of guys with Savion Hyder, but CJ Sonnet is the one that's going to be there. I think could maybe come out of that visit committed. It's just hard to see him with 2 visits on the books. And he even told me when I visited him in January, I might go to more. I mean, it's 15 minutes down the road. Was about that's a direct quote I can give you off the top of my memory. He can go to Ohio State practically any practice he wants. I think James Laurinaitis, Ryan Day would want him there. So I think he would be the next guy. If you said who's going to be in the class, it'd probably be CJ Sana out of Olentangy.
Okay. All right. Well, we're not going to give away too much, because you need to go to lettermenrow.com right now. Get your Lettermen Row subscription or membership, whatever you want to call it, $1 for your first week. Mick Walker's over there covering it all. He's got the impact of Max Riley committing to Ohio State. We just talked a little bit about it. He's got it more in depth over at lettermenrow.com. And then, of course, he's got the who's next, the next 5 guys who could commit. There's a couple more names we didn't talk about that are on that list, but I want you guys to go to lettermenrow.com and get that right now. That's Mick Walker on the other side of your screen. I'm just Spencer Holbrook. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys back for another video at Lettermen Row on Wednesday. Until then, go to lettermenrow.com.